Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel if you are new around here. Hi, my name is Vivian Asimos. I'm a researcher and a writer, and today I really hope I'm in focus. I had like a rush job of setting this up because I have somewhere to be. I literally just recorded some bonus episodes of my podcast. I'm a fan of that. My computer is still set up from recording. It has been a busy day, but I wanted to record this intro today rather than on the day that I'm actually going to be recording the vlog, because I didn't really want to be fussing about with this at that period of time because I am doing a kind of pseudo DIY writer retreat. So I thought what I would do for this kind of intro is explain what writer retreats are, explain kind of typically how they work, and then getting into how I have structured the writing retreat to be a little bit cheaper, a little bit more DIY, and see how it's going to all work for the next couple of days. So first off, what is a writer retreat? Now, traditionally, writer retreats are things that you sign up for. You go, there's multiple writers there. Somebody is running it, managing it like an event. There are schedules that you have to kind of keep to more or less. And it's also kind of a networking event as well as a way to get away to do your writing. The benefits of writing retreats are not just the networking, but also the fact that you are escaped from your daily responsibilities. You don't have to worry about that. You're not taking time away from where you could be writing by doing those things. It's also a change of scenery. Changing of scenery really helps us improve creativity, mind flow. It's just always a nice thing to do. The third one is that strict schedule. It can be very useful, particularly for people who aren't used to having that strict of a schedule, particularly when it comes to only writing time being structured. We might have a strict schedule because of all of those other daily responsibilities, but if it was completely up to us to just write when we want and not worry about all of that, it might not really follow a very strict schedule. This is why a lot of writers have very strict writer routines. You've probably seen a lot of people on YouTube doing kind of following different writer routine strategies and stuff like that. That's why those writers have those routines, because having free flow is kind of a problem. I'm still struggling. I don't have a good routine yet, so part of this is going to be experimenting with it. So traditional writing retreats, you would basically sign up for like an event and you would go there. There'd be many other people. Somebody would be managing it. You just kind of show up where they tell you to show up and do what you need to do in those places, and that's kind of all you have to really worry about. There are some people who do self-run writing retreats where they book, say, an Airbnb or an actual B&B somewhere and basically are away from their house. They do that for a certain amount of time and it's their kind of escape. So they're not there surrounded by other writers, but they have structured an escape to somewhere else. I am not escaping to somewhere else. I am staying right here. I am trying to run this pretty cheap. There are ways to do what I'm doing even cheaper, to borderline free. However, I'm not doing that. I acknowledge that I'm still spending money. However, it's a lot cheaper than buying a hotel room or an Airbnb somewhere else to take the travel cost out there, all of that kind of stuff. So that's one of the reasons why I'm staying. The second reason is that this is kind of ad hoc. This is a decision that I made kind of this week, so that I'm recording on a Friday. I kind of decided this on like Monday or Tuesday that, hey, I should do this next week, which is very short notice for doing any kind of lengthy travel or anything like that. One of the reasons, so I should kind of break this down into a couple of different categories. The first is why I'm doing the retreat, and then I'm going to go through the three main benefits of the writing retreat, which is escape from daily responsibilities, the changing up of the environment, as well as the strict schedule. And when I do those, I'm going to kind of explain how you could do them differently than I'm doing them if this is something that you are interested in. However, I'm going to be explaining how I'm going to be structuring this. So my primary reason for doing the writing retreat is I am very close to finishing this draft of my urban fantasy mystery fiction novel that I am calling Project Caramel Latte. For those of you who have been around, a lot of you came because of my querying video. I did finish a draft of this. It was like my first or second draft version of it. I was querying it. I felt a little bit weird about it, but I just thought it was my own insecurities about my writing. Turns out it wasn't. It was a structural problem with the piece. So I went back and I completely have been rewriting the entire story. I basically had to start from scratch again, restructure it, replot it, and I've basically had to change everything. So I have been trying to do this draft very quickly. I have managed so far to pretty much almost finish it. I'm very close to the end right now. I'm really wanting to finish this, and so I just thought I'm going to put everything aside for 3 days and be a full-time fiction writer for 3 days and see how much writing I can get done during that time frame. So that is why I am doing this. So as I said before, the 3 main benefits of a writing retreat is the escape from the daily responsibility, the changing of the environment, and the strict schedule. So I'm going to kind of go through each one of these, and I'm going to explain a little bit about what I'm doing in order to accommodate this aspect of it, and also maybe give some pointers as to things that you could do if you were wanting to replicate this in some kind of fashion. So the first thing is the escape from daily responsibilities. Now, I'm not actually as focused on this one. I don't have very many daily responsibilities. I know that sounds really bad. There are responsibilities that I have to do. However, I do not have children. And normally when we talk about daily responsibilities that take up a lot of your time, a lot of them are children. Let's be honest. And I don't have kids. I don't have pets. My vast, caregiving responsibility are all of the plants you see around me. And while some of them do demand my time quite a bit, it's really not that bad. Essentially, there were only a handful of things that I had to work around because I don't have children. So this is going to sound like a very simple solution. If you have kids, I recognize it's going to be a lot harder for you to do this while still staying at home. One thing that you could do, I don't have kids, so this might be a lot harder. I recognize. If you have a spouse or a partner of some sort that is someone you can trust taking care of the children, really having them delegate that is a big thing that you can do. I have known somebody who pays for childcare, but only during retreat times. So she's actually in the house with her children who have childcare essentially with them, but the childcare is able to keep them from bothering and can take care of the needs, and they don't have to worry about that. So at least during the days of writing. So if that's something within your means, that's something to consider. However, childcare is expensive. If you have children, this is just a much harder thing to adjust around, but that means that it's even more important for you. Like I said, it wasn't that massive of an issue for me. The second important thing is the change of environment. This is where travel is really nice. It can give you a change of scenery. It can kind of make things alter. There are ways to do this for free in your home. One of the tricks that I used to do a lot is to actually move the desk. You don't even have to move it into a different room. If you just shifted it to be facing a different direction, it suddenly feels really new and different. And then I would put it back at the end of the session of new that I was trying to encourage. If you do writing retreats kind of more regularly, it might be a way of tricking your brain to know that when the desk is oriented in that way, this is when I'm in it because this is my retreat. And then when it's back to its normal state, that's when you're more easily distracted because you have life stuff going on that you have to manage. That's something that I used to be able to do. However, in this space is rather small and tight. It's not as wide as it might sometimes look. I don't know if it looks very wide on camera, probably not. This is literally the only space that I have. and I can't really orient the desk in any other way. I tried when I was doing an office makeover. I tried for ages with a floor plan. I did everything I could to try to maneuver all of this furniture around in a new way. I just can't do it. On top of that, we have things like screwed into the desk for cable management. So even just like swinging it, which it wouldn't be able to fit sideways anyway, but even if it could, that's really difficult to do. Moving the stuff is not going to be sufficient. I also already work from home, and I don't have a very large home. I live in a small flat. So I have worked in every room of this house. I have worked in some fashion in every single room and space in this house. So none of it is going to feel new and novel to me because I spend most of my time here. So therefore, I am doing the very uncheap thing of actually working outside of my house. What I have decided to do is actually spend 9 to 5, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of next week, out of the house. I am not allowed to come home during that time frame. Speaking of which, let's get into my schedule. My daily schedule is going to be quite regimented. I'm going to try to really stick to it. And part of this is also to see if this works as like a writing day routine. So that's what I'm really hoping to work on. Now, obviously, I'm going to be doing quite a bit of cafe hopping, which does cost money. I'm also going to be outside of the house for lunch, and so therefore it's going to be involving a bit of money. So like I said, you can probably do a lot of this for free if you had a slightly different home plotting out than I do, or if you work a normal job, if you took 3 days off, then working from home is the new environment, right? That's not something that you're used to. So that can be the change, is working from home. If you're used to always working at the same desk, moving to a different part of the house can be new. There are ways that you can do it without paying. Hell, just working at the library. I could just go to the library and work at the library all day if I wanted to. However, I really hate working at the library. So I don't really want to be spending all day in the library because that drives me insane. That's what I'm doing. I'm doing a writing retreat, DIY, to try to get this damn draft finished. So I will see you on Monday when this whole thing begins. Yay. Good morning on the first day of my DIY writing retreat. I did realize as I was filming this that this might end up being a bit of like a cafe tour of Salisbury. So I hope that you get a nice little glance at some of the things that you can do. And we are actually starting with a chain called Boston Tea Party. I don't normally like going to chain coffee shops, especially here in Salisbury, because there are so many independent ones, but Boston Tea Party is in a really cool old building. It's been around since like the 1300s or something, and you can actually, when you go inside, you can see a lot of the old architecture and the marks on the walls, and they've done a really good job of preserving it while also making it functional. And so it's just a really cool place to go. And actually, this coffee shop is the setting of the very first scene in my book, Project Caramel Latte. I decided that in this writing retreat, I was going to try to go to places that meant something for my book. And my book is set in Salisbury, so it was really easy to try to find places that resonated with me and also were inspiring to the book itself, to try to kind of get more inspiration when finishing it up. Writing at Boston Tea Party was really nice, but I got really antsy early, so I ended up leaving about an hour earlier than I was supposed to, and I went for a little bit of a walk. I normally go for a morning walk, but I didn't during the schedule. I didn't really schedule it in, which in retrospect was probably a bad idea, and so I decided to just go ahead and go for a walk at that point. And I walked around the cathedral, so you can see some really nice views of the cathedral from kind of doing a little circle around the cathedral grounds. I then went to lunch and very awkwardly filmed myself. I ended up not doing this for very long because it was odd and I didn't really know how to do this. So yeah, that was that was lunch. And then for the reading portion of the day, I went to an independent coffee shop that I go to often and I really love. It's called Stones. It's right by the Market Square, where the weather was quite nice, but it was shady enough and cool enough to feel like I could sit outside because I don't like doing it when it's too hot. And yeah, I got to sit outside and watch people go by on Market Square and read my book. And I finished reading The ABC Murders by Agatha Christie that day. And I finished up writing on Monday by going to the library and settling down there. I'm gonna talk about this a little bit more at the end, but working at a public library is not my favorite thing to do, so I ended up not actually being here for very long. I only kind of worked for about an hour and a half, I think, and then went home a bit early, but you know, it was fine. I ended up writing 5,664 words on Monday, so I was pretty happy with that. And welcome to another day of the DIY writing retreat. Today we are actually going to be starting by going to Saunders, another independent cafe whose setting you might recognize. I do write here quite a lot, so you might recognize some of the shots in the background from previous writing vlogs. I do really like writing here. Not only is the coffee kind of nice and the atmosphere is kind of chill, but also the people who own the coffee shop really are very supportive of people coming to the cafe to do work. So I really like coming there because I don't feel quite as awkward about sitting there for a while and writing, because I know that the owners are okay with it. after the awkwardness of filming lunch from the day before, I skipped filming lunch. Sorry about that. I actually went back to Boston Tea Party for lunch because on Monday I realized how cheap some of their breakfast sandwiches were, so I thought I could go back for lunch for one of those, so that's what I did. And I ended up chilling there for about, I don't know, until about 1:15, 1:30-ish, because I did also do a little bit of reading there. Afterwards, I went to another of my favorite coffee shops. This one is The Yard. It's just off Fisherton Street. It's a little bit kind of off the beaten track, so it's not quite as busy as some of the high street ones are. But it's such a nice coffee shop and it's so cute. And they have a cafe dog, and I really love this place. And I love it so much that this is another coffee shop that is featured in my book. And it's actually the setting for the last scene of the book. And I knew that I was encroaching the end of the manuscript, and I kind of wanted to be sat in the last space writing about my main character also being sat in that space, and it just felt really cool when I did get to that point. Good morning. It is Wednesday, and no, I am not at a cafe doing another day of my DIY writing retreat. So after the last writing session yesterday, I was at home, I was hanging out in the evening doing my normal chill time, and I knew I didn't have very much left of my rough draft of Project Caramel Latte to go. I was kind of in the mode of really thinking about things and how I wanted to edit stuff and what I wanted to add and all of that kind of stuff. And so I just decided, you know what, maybe I'll sit down and I'll work on it just a tiny bit longer. And then I think that's it.
You done?
Yeah, I think so.
Like everything.
Yeah, I think so. I finished. So I have officially finished writing my rough draft of the second officially to send out version, but probably the fourth version of this book that I have written. Oh boy, I'm feeling really good. I think this version of it is so much better than other ones. I'm feeling a lot more positive about it. I'm feeling a lot more just good about the story and how it's plotted and how it's worked and how it's structured, and I've added a lot of stuff. It's just much better. It's just so much better, and I'm really glad that I took this time to do it. Before we close up talking about the actual writing retreat, I thought I would give a little summary of where we are with Project Caramel Latte. My novel is not massively long. Even though it's an urban fantasy, it takes on more of the dynamics and structure of a very traditional whodunit, which tend to not be as long as fantasy novels are. So my manuscript currently sits at 90,200 words, which is roughly about 258 pages of a paperback, though that is without any kind of formatting. So let's talk about this. DIY writing retreat. I actually took notes. Hold on. They are in my bullet journal, which the sticker of is starting to very much fade. First off, it was supposed to be 3 days worth. It is not. I was thinking that if I finished early that I would use the other writing retreat day or hours or however long was left to get ahead on video essay scripts and things like that, other writing that I need to do. But to be honest, I pushed so hard the second day that I'm just too tired. As a kind of quick recap, on the first day, I wrote 5,664 words. Now, on a typical just kind of I'm writing today session, I try to do between 1,500 words and 2,000. I've done about 2,000 to 2,500 lately. So 5,600 is about twice as much as I normally do. So that was pretty decent. That was kind of what I was half expecting, maybe closer to 7,000 or 8,000. I did know that the latter scenes of the book, the last say 5 or so scenes, were ones that were going to be fairly similar to my previous version, though with added characters and changed elements. But the vast majority of it was going to be roughly the same. I didn't change too much else about the scene. So it was going to be fairly quicker to write, which is why I aimed to write about 10,000 words the second day, because I knew I was going to be able to produce faster because I already had the stuff written. And that was true. I did write 11,895 words, and then that was where I ended. So that's the book. That's the book written. So yeah, I probably should have written less yesterday and spread it out a little bit better, which leads me to my first kind of main point about the DIY writing retreat, which is I think I picked the wrong point in the project to do it. I knew I was nearing the end, which is why I was like, hey, on a whim, let's throw together this thing and let's do this like next. A, I should have had more time to plan. And B, I probably should have planned a writing retreat, whether a real one or a DIY one, more at a different point in the project's lifespan. I'm thinking primarily the beginning might be a really good time to do this, so that way you really hit the ground running and you have quite a good amount finished when you then go back to your normal routines and you're trying to write at the same time. If you've already got the first 20,000 words written, it can feel like you're not starting as much from scratch when you're also balancing the rest of your life going on. The other thing is maybe midway, when you kind of hit that middle slump, might be a good time to do it. I always hit a point, probably about a halfway, 3/4 of the way through a project, where I start hating everything about it and hating the fact that I took it on. I hate everything I've written. I hate everything I continue to write. And it's just a matter of I've just got to put words down on a sheet of paper so I can get past this. And that's kind of the mentality that I have. I do it with my nonfiction. I do it with my fiction. It's just the way my brain works. And maybe when I hit that point is a good sign of hey, maybe let me take a second. Let me plan a retreat so I can just power through this feeling and get back to a point where I feel good about what I'm doing again. Maybe those would have been better points. The problem with scheduling the retreat at a point where I was nearing the end, it meant that when I was working yesterday, I saw how many scenes I had left on my Scrivener, how little there was left. I saw how quick I would be able to just do it. And so I just thought, screw it, I'm going to power through and I'm just going to do this for hours today. And that might not always be the healthiest, because today I am so mentally exhausted that I don't think I'm going to be able to do much else today. So I'm glad I had today kind of booked free for writing, because I don't know if I'm capable of doing much else today. The second kind of concern that I hit was that it was really difficult to be out of the house all day. And I know that people with 9-to-5 jobs, or you have to go into an office, are going to kind of roll your eyes at that. But it's not really about being out of the house. But when you don't really have a place you need to be at a specific time, it's a lot harder to just be out of the house all day. My only thing was that I couldn't come home until I was done. That was the only requirement, which means that I kind of felt like I was floating a lot. In previous lives, when I would be out of the house all day because I was working, it was typically because I had, like I said, places that I could go. So I worked at a university as both a teacher and a research assistant. I was working on my PhD. So I had a lot of things to do. I had a lot of places to go. I had a desk allocated to me as a PhD student. I had classes that I needed to be attending as a teacher. I had a university library I could go and work at. I only went to cafes once or twice a week. I didn't actually go to cafes that often. And unfortunately, I don't have a lot of those same resources as I used to. So I don't have a university library for me to go to. I don't have a desk outside of my house for me to go to, which means that in order for me to be sat working somewhere, I have to be essentially paying for that space. You kind of always question everything that you're doing or where you're being because of that. I did a lot of working at cafes during this time, and I was doing a lot of cafe hopping, which was fun. I do have to say I really loved that. If I were to schedule myself my dream writing routine, it would involve a cafe. I really love working at cafes. However, sitting at a cafe and paying for coffee and a piece of cake, it gets expensive. You know what I mean? I recognize this. Unfortunately, spending all day at a cafe and essentially paying for that space by furnishing it with coffees and cakes and stuff like that was cheaper than allocating myself a hot desk at a local co-working space. I think it's just one of those situations where I just don't have free third spaces to go to other than the library. I do have a public library here. I keep comparing it to having a university library, but for me, a university library has a different vibe to a public library. And while I'm very happy to have my public library, it does have a lot of people coming in and out, a lot more flow, a lot more changing environment, which is great. On one hand, because it means that people are using the library, which I'm really happy for. Libraries need to be used, libraries need to be funded, and need to be accessed and accessible. And it's such an important place for so many people. And I'm really glad that the one in Salisbury is getting used. That makes me really happy. However, that makes it have a very different vibe than when I would, say, sit at a university library. So I don't really like working at the library. Also, I really struggle to connect to their internet, but that's a side point. So yeah, I kind of lack those free third spaces. It makes it a lot harder to do something like this. So that's something that I need to consider. I either need to save up more money so that way I don't feel as bad or as concerned about how much I'm spending during that time. Maybe I need to figure out like exact cafes I'm going to. That might be something that I could do. Or I need to refigure out my house to make it where I could be sat here and working, but in a way that feels new. The third issue that I had was the way that I had scheduled my time. So I had given myself, I think the first situation, it was a 3-hour block from 9 to 12 that I did my first writing session, and then I did my second one from 3 to 5, which is only a 2-hour window. I don't think I ever did that. So that it kind of, everything was kind of thrown off because I don't need as much time set aside to write as I think I do. I think 2 hours is actually a good session length for me. I found that I was writing a pretty solid amount during that second window, but the timing was different, but I filled a lot of the time. So I was writing for about 2 hours. I think the problem is that I tend to either produce or not. That's the way my brain works. So either I am writing and I'm writing a lot, or I'm not. And I know that that sounds crazy because like, of course you're either writing or you're not, but I sometimes write with other people and I'll find that in the same window, I'm writing twice as much as them. And that's not to say that I think I'm better than them, because then I give up in half the amount of time, right? So like I'll write with them and in say 3 hours, they'll be starting to finish up and having written what I wrote in an hour and a half, but then after an hour and a half, I'm done. Like my brain is finished. So we end up producing the same amount at the end of a day, but the amount of time spent working on it in that day is a different amount of time. Does that make sense? I'm not like trying to put anyone down. It's just that I get burnt out faster, but I produce faster, if that makes sense. And I think I was figuring out my schedule as it works for other people. That I've seen most like writing routines and stuff have like 3-hour chunks or another 2-hour chunk. Like they'll work in like huge amounts of time when normally I give myself like an hour. Like this hour I'm gonna write. And then I only write during that hour and I produce 2,000 words during that hour, but then I'm done. You know what I mean? Like then I'm finished. Then I feel finished. My brain is finished. I think I need to have a better understanding of the way that my brain works in terms of production. And then also within that, what that means to fill the rest of the time with. I do like the fact that I restricted myself on what I was allowed to partake in as far as fun goes, but maybe I was a little bit too strict on myself. All right, let's talk about what worked. I really liked having somewhere I had to be at certain times. I know I just said I didn't stick to it, but the morning in particular was super nice. I spend most of my time working from home, and while I do need to produce things, and I often need to be somewhere in the afternoon, In the morning, it makes it feel like, well, I could sit down at my desk at 9, but like, who's watching, right? Like, who cares? Who knows if I've started at 9? I could start at 10, and that's not going to change anything. And so I find that I get really lazy. I find that I do a lot of like housework stuff in the morning. So sometimes I'm not sitting down until 11:30 or noon. Basically having restrictions on myself where I physically couldn't do house chores because I left the house at 9 was super nice. And it's probably something that I need to be more disciplined about, is saying, look, I can't do this thing first thing in the morning. I need to do it in the afternoon instead because I need to be sitting down at my desk at 9. And I've learned a lot about how quickly I can produce and what I can manage. I do like the idea of a cafe writing retreat. I think there's an author that is their writing routine. I can't remember their name. I'll put them in the subtitles or whatever. So that's like my dream. It's like my dream routine is just being able to flip around through cafes all day and write and have a fun time. The problem is that it costs money. It costs money, and I don't have the money to be spending to go to cafes all the fucking time. That was my little DIY writing retreat, and the completion of this draft version of Project Caramel Latte. I'm going to be filming myself doing the rough draft to first draft transition. Anyway, that was my DIY writing retreat. It was a bit weird, and I get that it was a bit different, but I don't have the money to be running around and, booking Airbnbs in really fancy places in the Scottish Highlands. Like, I'd love to. You know what I mean? Like, that would be amazing. But I just can't. Maybe one day. That would be nice, wouldn't it? Thank you for coming with me. Tell me what you are writing about. If you've ever done a writing retreat, whether it's like a real one or a makeshift one like I did, let me know. Because I'd love to know what works and what doesn't work. I've never done a formal traditional one because, again, they cost money. I've never done one before, so give me your notes on like what you think really worked with them if you've been on them before, because that might help to inform making another one. Do all of the YouTube things like liking and sharing and subscribing and all of that stuff. Go check out all the other links. I have another YouTube channel that is a video essay channel if you are interested in video essays. And I also have a book coming out in September, which will be very soon by the time you are watching this. You can go and pre-order it now. It's an anthropological study of cosplay. It's one of my nonfiction books. You can go check that out, again, in the description below. And that's everything from me. Thank you for being with me and sitting with me and making me feel not quite so lonely while I do this writing retreat and finish up the rough draft of version number of Project Caramel Latte. Bye!